The human ship called Starrunner moved slowly through space toward the big space station. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge looking out at the metal structure that spun slowly in the darkness. This was the day he had been waiting for. Today, humans would meet the Zephyrians for the first time. Jake was a tall man with short brown hair and calm blue eyes. He had been in space for 15 years, but this mission was different from all the others. Behind him stood Dr. Amy Chen, a smart woman who knew many languages. Next to her was Ben Parker, who studied how different people lived and thought. "Captain, we are getting close to the docking area," said the pilot. "Good. Amy, are you ready to talk with them?" Jake asked. Amy nodded. She had spent 2 years learning the Zephyrian language, from the radio signals they had sent to Earth. But learning from radio waves was very different from talking to real aliens, face to face. "I hope I can understand them," Amy said. "Their language is very complex." Ben looked nervous too. "What if we say something wrong? What if we make them angry?" Jake put his hand on Ben's shoulder. "We will be careful. We will be respectful. That is all we can do." The Starrunner docked with the space station with a soft bump. Jake felt his heart beat faster. He had met many different kinds of people from Earth, but never anyone from another planet. The airlock opened with a hiss. Cool air rushed in from the station. Jake stepped through first, followed by Amy and Ben. The station was bigger inside than it looked from outside. The walls were made of smooth white metal that seemed to glow with soft light. They walked down a long hallway. Their footsteps echoed in the quiet space. At the end of the hall, they came to a large room with a high ceiling. And there, waiting for them, were the Zephyrians. Jake had seen pictures, but seeing them in person was different. They were taller than humans, with long arms and legs. Their skin was blue-green and seemed to shine like water in sunlight. The most amazing thing was the crystal formations on their foreheads. They looked like small crowns made of clear, colored glass. The lead Zephyrian stepped forward. She was very tall and beautiful, with bright purple crystals on her head. Her movements were smooth and graceful like a dancer. "I am Ambassador Lyra Thess," she said in perfect English. Her voice was musical and clear. "Welcome to Neutral Station Harmony." Jake stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I am Captain Jake Morrison. This is Dr. Amy Chen and Ben Parker. We are honored to meet you." Lyra Thess looked at them carefully with her large silver eyes. Jake could tell she was studying them, trying to understand what humans were like. "Your species is smaller than I expected," she said. "And your species is more beautiful than we imagined," Jake replied. Lyra Thess seemed pleased by this. Behind her, other Zephyrians stood in a perfect line. Their crystals caught the light and made small rainbows on the walls, but Jake noticed that one young Zephyrian stood farther back, almost hidden in the shadows. "Let me introduce my team," Lyra Thess said. She pointed to each Zephyrian and said their names. They all had beautiful flowing names that sounded like music. When she came to the young one in the back, she paused. "And this is Kiravan, our translator." Kiravan stepped forward slightly. Jake could see her better now. She was younger than the others, with smaller crystals on her forehead. The crystals were duller too, not bright and shining like the others. On her left arm, there was a long scar that broke the smooth pattern of her blue-green skin. "Hello?" Kiravan said quietly. Her voice was soft and uncertain. "It's very nice to meet you, Kiravan," Amy said with a warm smile. Kiravan looked surprised that Amy had spoken directly to her. She glanced at Lyra Thess, then back at Amy. "We have prepared rooms for your stay," Lyra Thess said. "Tomorrow we will begin the formal meetings. Tonight you should rest." They were shown to their rooms, which were clean and comfortable. Jake met with Amy and Ben in his room later that evening. "Did you notice how they treated that young translator?" Amy asked. "You mean Kiravan?" Ben said. "Yes, they seemed to ignore her." "She looked sad," Amy added. "And did you see her scar?" "The others all looked perfect, but she was different." Jake nodded. "Maybe their society is different from ours. Maybe they don't like people who look different." "That would be strange," Ben said. "On Earth, we have learned that differences can be good things." Amy was quiet for a moment. "I want to talk to her more. I think she might be interesting." "Be careful," Jake warned. "We don't want to cause problems on our first day." But Amy was already thinking about the young Zephyrian with the sad eyes and the quiet voice. Something about Kiravan made Amy want to know more about her. The next morning would bring new challenges and discoveries. The humans did not know that their simple kindness would soon change everything for the Zephyrians. especially for one young woman who thought she was ugly and worthless. Outside the station, stars twinkled in the endless darkness of space, watching over the beginning of something that would change two worlds forever. The next morning came quickly. Amy woke up early and felt excited about the day ahead. She had been thinking about Kiravan all night. There was something about the young Zephyrian that made Amy curious. The formal meetings began in a large conference room. Jake sat across from Ambassador Lyrathes at a long table. They talked about trade and peace between their two worlds. Amy sat nearby, ready to help if there were any language problems. Kiravan stood in the corner of the room, quiet and still. She translated when needed, but otherwise she stayed silent. Amy watched her and noticed how she never looked directly at anyone. Her eyes stayed down, looking at the floor. During a break in the meetings, Amy walked over to Kiravan. "Your English is very good," Amy said with a smile. Kiravan looked up, surprised. "Thank you. I have been studying your language for many years." "How many languages do you know?" Amy asked. "7, Kiravan said quietly. "Maybe 8 if you count the old form of our language that nobody speaks anymore." Amy's eyes grew wide. "That's amazing. I only know 3 languages well, and I thought I was good at languages." For the first time, Kiravan almost smiled. But then she looked around the room and saw other Zephyrians watching them. Her face became serious again. "I should not take up your time," Kiravan said. "You have important work to do." "Talking to you is important work," Amy said. "I want to understand your people better." Kiravan looked confused by this idea. "But I am not a good example of my people." "What do you mean?" Amy asked. Kiravan touched the crystals on her forehead. They were much smaller than the other Zephyrians' crystals, and they looked cloudy instead of clear and bright. "I am damaged," Kiravan said simply. "My crystals did not grow right when I was young. And this," she pointed to the scar on her arm, "this makes me ugly." Amy felt her heart hurt for this young woman. "Who told you that you were ugly?" "Everyone knows," Kiravan said. "In our society, beauty means perfection. Perfect crystals, perfect skin, perfect everything. I am not perfect, so I am not beautiful." Amy wanted to argue, but she could see that Kiravan truly believed what she was saying. "How did you get the scar?" Amy asked gently. Kiravan was quiet for a long moment. "When I was a child, there was an accident. A piece of metal fell and cut my arm. The doctors saved my life, but they could not fix the scar. After that, other children would not play with me. Adults would look away when they saw me. That must have been very lonely," Amy said. "Yes," Kiravan whispered. "It was." The meeting started again, and Amy had to go back to her seat. But she kept thinking about what Kiravan had told her. In the afternoon, when there was another break, Amy found Kiravan in a small side room reading. "May I sit with you?" Amy asked. Kiravan nodded. Amy sat down beside her. "Can I ask you something personal?" Amy said. Kiravan looked nervous but nodded. "Do you think you will ever find someone to love you?" Amy asked. Kiravan's eyes filled with tears. "No," she said. "Who would want someone like me? I am broken. In our society, only perfect people can find mates. I will always be alone." Amy felt angry at the Zephyrian society for making this smart, kind young woman feel so bad about herself. But she also felt sad for Kiravan. "What about humans?" Amy asked. "What do you think about how we look?" Kiravan seemed confused by the question. "You are different, smaller than us. Your skin is not as nice as ours. You have no crystals at all. But you are not ugly in the same way I am ugly." "Do you think all humans look the same?" Amy asked. "No, I have noticed that you all look different from each other. Captain Morrison has light skin and Dr. Parker has dark skin. You have black hair and the captain has brown hair. This is strange to us. Most Zephyrians look very similar to each other," Amy smiled. "On Earth, we have many different kinds of people. Different colors, different sizes, different everything. And we think this makes us stronger, not weaker." Kiravan looked interested but confused. "But how do you choose mates if everyone looks different? How do you know who is beautiful enough?" "We choose based on many things," Amy explained. "Yes, we care about how someone looks, but we also care about how kind they are, how smart they are, how they make us feel. Some humans think scars are beautiful because they show that someone was brave or survived something difficult." Kiravan touched her scar. "Really?" "Really," Amy said. "And some humans prefer people who look different instead of people who look perfect." This idea seemed impossible to Kiravan. She had spent her whole life believing that she was ugly and worthless because she was different. "I do not understand," Kiravan said. "How can different be good?" Amy thought for a moment. "Let me ask you this. If everyone in your society looked exactly the same, how would you tell them apart?" We would not be able to," Kiravan said slowly. "Exactly. Being different makes you special. It makes you. Kiravan was quiet for a long time. Amy could see that she was thinking hard about these new ideas. "Dr. Chen," Kiravan said finally, "do you really think that some humans might not think I am ugly?" Amy looked at Kiravan's blue-green skin that shone like water, her large silver eyes that were full of intelligence and kindness, and her graceful way of moving. Even with her smaller crystals and her scar, Amy thought she was beautiful. "I think some humans would think you are very beautiful," Amy said honestly. For the first time since they had met, Kiravan truly smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real, and Amy thought that smile made her even more beautiful than before. That night, Amy told Jake and Ben about her conversation with Kiravan. "It's sad how their society treats people who are different," Ben said. "Maybe we can help her see herself differently," Amy said. Jake looked thoughtful. "We have to be careful. We don't want to cause problems between our peoples." But Amy was already planning how she might help Kiravan understand that being different did not mean being ugly or worthless. She did not know that her kindness would soon lead to something that would shock everyone. Amy could not stop thinking about Kiravan. The next day, she asked Jake if she could spend more time talking with the young Zephyrian. "Of course," Jake said. "Learning about their culture is part of our mission." Amy found Kiravan in the station's library, reading a book about human history. She looked up when Amy approached. "Hello, Dr. Chen," Kiravan said softly. "Please call me Amy," she said, sitting down. "What are you reading?" "I am trying to understand your people better. This book talks about your wars and your art and your different societies," Amy nodded. "What interests you most?" Kiravan pointed to a page with pictures. "These images show humans with marks on their skin. The book calls them tattoos. Why do humans put marks on themselves?" Amy looked at the pictures. They showed people from different cultures with tattoos and body paint. Some humans think these marks make them more beautiful. Others use them to show what group they belong to or to remember important things. "But they are making their skin imperfect on purpose," Kiravan said, confused. "To us, these marks don't make the skin imperfect. They make it special and unique." Amy had an idea. She pulled out her small computer and showed Kiravan pictures of people from Earth. "Look at this woman," Amy said, showing a photo of a model with intricate face tattoos. "In her culture, these marks show that she is a grown woman and a respected member of her tribe. People think she is very beautiful." Kiravan stared at the photo. "She looks like she has scars, but they are." "Pretty?" "Yes. And look at this." Amy showed another photo of a man with ritual scarification on his arms. "This man got these scars in a ceremony. Each scar means something important to him. In his culture, a man without these scars would not be considered attractive." Kiravan touched her own scar. "They choose to have scars?" "Some do. And some people, like you, get scars from accidents or injuries. But that doesn't make the scars bad. It just means they have a different story." Amy showed more pictures. Athletes with scars from sports injuries, doctors with scars from helping patients, people who had survived accidents and wore their scars with pride. "See this woman?" Amy pointed to a photo of a firefighter. "She got these burns while saving children from a fire. People think her scars make her a hero, not ugly." Kiravan was quiet for a long time, looking at all the pictures. "I never thought that scars could mean good things. Every scar tells a story," Amy said. "Your scar tells the story of a little girl who survived a dangerous accident. That makes you brave, not broken." "But my crystals," Kiravan said, touching her forehead. "They are still small and dull." Amy looked at Kiravan's crystals carefully. In the library's soft light, they seemed to glow with a gentle, warm light. They were different from the bright, sharp crystals of the other Zephyrians, but Amy thought they were beautiful in their own way. "Your crystals remind me of moonstones," Amy said. They have a soft, mysterious beauty. On Earth, some people prefer gentle beauty to bright, flashy beauty. Kiravan looked surprised. Really? Really? Can I bring someone to meet you? I think you would like Ben. Kiravan nodded, though she looked nervous. Amy found Ben in the human quarters and asked him to come with her. When they returned to the library, Amy introduced them. Kiravan, this is Ben Parker. Ben, this is Kiravan. Ben smiled warmly. Amy has told me a lot about you. She says you speak 8 languages. That's incredible. Kiravan blushed, which made her blue-green skin turn a pretty purple color. Thank you. As Ben sat down, Kiravan noticed something. Ben's hands and arms had burn scars, some small and some larger. They looked old but were clearly visible. You have scars too, Kiravan said quietly. Ben looked at his hands and smiled. Yes, I got these in a lab accident 3 years ago. I was studying some old pottery that was very fragile, and there was a chemical fire. Were you not ashamed? Kiravan asked. Ben thought about this. At first, yes. I thought people would stare at me or think I was ugly. I even tried to hide my hands for a while. What changed? Kiravan asked. I met a woman who changed how I thought about my scars, Ben said. She told me that my scars showed I was passionate about my work, that I cared so much about learning that I was willing to take risks. She said they made me interesting, not ugly. Did she love you? Kiravan asked, then looked embarrassed for asking such a personal question. Ben laughed gently. She did. We're married now. She traces my scars with her fingers sometimes and tells me they're part of what makes me beautiful to her. Kiravan looked amazed. She thinks your scars are beautiful. She thinks they're part of my story. And she loves my story, so she loves my scars too. Amy watched as Kiravan processed this information. The young Zephyrian had spent her whole life believing that scars and imperfections made someone unlovable. But here was proof that this was not true for humans. Ben, Amy said, can you tell Kiravan about human beauty standards? Ben nodded. On Earth we have a saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. This means that different people think different things are beautiful. Some people like tall partners, some like short partners. Some like pale skin, some like dark skin, some like quiet people, some like loud people. But how do you choose? Kiravan asked. If everyone has different ideas about beauty, how do you know who to love? You don't choose based on some rule book, Ben explained. You choose based on how someone makes you feel. When I met my wife, I thought she was beautiful not just because of how she looked, but because of how kind she was, how smart she was, how she made me laugh. Amy added, and the more you love someone, the more beautiful they become to you. Love changes how you see someone. Kiravan was quiet for a long time. Amy and Ben could see that she was thinking very hard about everything they had told her. If I lived on Earth, Kiravan said finally, do you think someone might love me even, with my scars and my small crystals? Amy and Ben looked at each other, then at Kiravan. They saw her intelligence shining in her silver eyes. Her gentle kindness, her graceful movements, and yes, her unique beauty that came from being different. I think many people would find you beautiful, Amy said honestly. I think you would have no trouble finding love on Earth, Ben added. Kiravan smiled, and this time it was a big, real smile that lit up her whole face. Amy thought that smile was the most beautiful thing she had seen since arriving at the station. Thank you, Kiravan whispered. Thank you for helping me see myself differently. Amy reached out and gently touched Kiravan's scarred arm. Thank you for letting us be your friends. None of them knew that tomorrow would bring a moment that would change everything, not just for Kiravan, but for both their entire species. The formal dinner was held in the station's grand dining hall. Long tables were set with beautiful dishes and glowing crystals that provided soft light. All the important Zephyrians were there, wearing their finest clothes and jewelry. Their crystals sparkled like stars on their foreheads. Jake wore his best uniform, and Amy and Ben were dressed formally too. They sat at the main table with Ambassador Lyrathes and the other high-ranking Zephyrians. Kiravan stood near the wall with the other translators and servants, almost invisible in the shadows. The dinner began with speeches about friendship between the two peoples. Ambassador Lyra Thess talked about the great honor of meeting humans. Jake spoke about learning from each other and building peace. The food was strange but delicious. The Zephyrians ate quietly and gracefully, using beautiful silver utensils. Everything was perfect and formal. Amy kept glancing at Kiravan, who had not eaten anything. The young Zephyrian stood very still, looking down at her feet. Amy noticed that some of the other Zephyrians would look at Kiravan and then whisper to each other. During the main course, one of the Zephyrian officials, a man with very large bright red crystals, made a comment to his neighbor that was loud enough for others to hear. "I still do not understand why the humans spend so much time talking to the damaged one," he said. "Do their people have so few proper individuals to speak with?" Several Zephyrians laughed quietly. Amy felt her face get hot with anger, but she tried to stay calm. Jake noticed Amy's reaction and looked at her questioningly. Ambassador Lyra Thess heard the comment too. Instead of stopping it, she seemed to agree with it. She turned to Jake with what looked like a polite smile. "Captain Morrison," she said, "I must apologize for any confusion. My staff tells me that your people have been spending considerable time with Kiravan. I hope you understand that she is not representative of our people. She is, how do you say, defective?" The word defective hung in the air like poison. Amy saw Kiravan's face turn pale and her shoulders shook slightly. Ben clenched his fists under the table. "We keep her on the mission only because she is useful for translation work," Lyra Thess continued. "But I worry that spending time with damaged individuals might give you the wrong impression of our species. Perhaps it would be better if you spoke mainly with our proper representatives." Jake felt something burning in his chest. He looked across the room at Kiravan, who was trying not to cry. He thought about all the conversations Amy had shared with him about this young woman, who spoke 8 languages, who was kind and intelligent and thoughtful. "I hope this does not offend you," Lyra Thess added, "but perhaps your people are not good at recognizing quality in others. We understand that humans are a young species, but surely you can see that she is inferior to the rest of us." That was enough. Jake stood up so suddenly that his chair scraped loudly against the floor. Every eye in the room turned to him. The hall became completely silent. "Ambassador Lyra Thess," Jake said in a clear, strong voice, "I need to correct something you just said." Lyra Thess looked surprised. "Captain Morrison, please sit down." "There is no need for—" "There is every need," Jake interrupted. He looked around the room at all the beautiful, perfect Zephyrians with their bright crystals and flawless skin. Then he looked at Kiravan, who was staring at him with wide, frightened eyes. "You asked if humans are good at recognizing quality in others," Jake said. "Let me answer that question." He pointed directly at Kiravan. "That young woman there is not defective. She is not damaged. She is not inferior. By human standards, she is extraordinary." The room gasped. Several Zephyrians dropped their utensils. Lyra Thess's mouth fell open. Jake kept talking, his voice growing stronger. "You see small crystals and call them defective. We see unique beauty that catches light in a completely different way. You see a scar and call it damage. We see a mark of survival, a sign of strength and bravery." Kiravan was crying now, but Amy could see they were not tears of sadness. "In the past 3 days," Jake continued, "we have discovered that Kiravan speaks 8 languages fluently. She understands complex ideas quickly. She is kind to strangers. She works hard without complaining. She has faced difficulties in her life and emerged stronger." Jake walked around the table until he was standing in the middle of the room, where everyone could see him clearly. "You want to know if humans can recognize quality?" Jake's voice rang through the hall. "Kiravan is the most impressive individual we have met on this station. Not because she is perfect, but because she is real, because she has depth and character and genuine beauty that goes far beyond the surface." The silence in the room was complete. You could hear the soft hum of the station's air system. Jake turned directly to Kiravan, who was still standing by the wall, tears streaming down her face. "Kiravan," Jake said formally, "on behalf of the human people, I would like to invite you to visit Earth as our honored guest and cultural ambassador. We would be privileged to learn more from someone of your intelligence and character." Kiravan made a small sound of surprise. Around the room, Zephyrians were staring in shock. Some were whispering frantically to each other. "This is highly irregular," Lyra Thess said, standing up. "She is not qualified for such an honor. She is not even a proper representative of our people." Jake turned back to the ambassador. With respect, Ambassador, that is exactly why we want her to come. She represents something your society has forgotten how to value. She represents the strength that comes from overcoming challenges, the beauty that comes from being unique, and the wisdom that comes from understanding what it means to be different. He looked around the room at all the shocked faces. On Earth, we have learned that our differences make us stronger. We have learned that true beauty comes from many sources, not just from looking like everyone else. We have learned that the most interesting and valuable people are often the ones who have struggled and survived and grown stronger. Jake walked over to Kiravan, who was trembling. He bowed deeply to her, as he would to any important dignitary. Kiravan, will you accept our invitation? Through her tears, Kiravan looked around the room. Every Zephyrian was staring at her. For the first time in her life, they were all paying attention to her. But more importantly, these humans valued her in a way her own people never had. Yes, she whispered. Then louder, yes, I accept. Jake smiled and turned back to the room. Then it is settled. The humans formally request that Kiravan serve as cultural ambassador to Earth. Lyrithis sat down heavily. She could not refuse the request without insulting the humans, but she was completely confused by their choice. The dinner continued, but everything had changed. The Zephyrians whispered constantly among themselves, trying to understand what had just happened. Some looked at Kiravan with new interest, others with confusion. But Kiravan stood a little taller now. For the first time in her life, someone had called her beautiful, valuable, and worthy of honor. And they had said it in front of everyone. Amy smiled at Jake as he sat back down. That was brave, she whispered. It was the truth, Jake replied. And sometimes the truth needs to be said loudly. None of them knew that Jake's words would soon spread throughout Zephyrian society and change the way an entire species thought about beauty, worth, and what it meant to be valuable. The days after the dinner were unlike anything anyone had expected. News of Captain Morrison's speech spread quickly through the space station, and then to the Zephyrian homeworld through their communication systems. Ambassador Lyrithis was in her private office, talking rapidly on a video call with leaders back home. Through the thin walls, Amy could hear raised voices and confused arguments. They want the damaged one? A voice from the screen asked. Why would they want her specifically? I do not understand it either, Lyrithis replied. But if we refuse their request, it will insult them. The trade agreements depend on maintaining good relations. Meanwhile, Kiravan was experiencing something she had never felt before. Other Zephyrians were looking at her, really looking at her for the first time in her life. Some looked confused, some looked curious, and some looked almost interested. A young Zephyrian male named Telan approached her in the hallway. He had always ignored her before, but now he seemed nervous and uncertain. Kiravan, he said quietly, is it true that the humans think you are beautiful? Kiravan was so surprised by the question that she almost could not answer. They said I was. But how can that be? Telan asked. Your crystals are small and you have that scar. The humans see these things differently, Kiravan explained. They think differences can be beautiful too. Telan was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that shocked Kiravan completely. I have always thought your crystals were pretty. They are softer than ours, more gentle. I just never said anything because I thought I was wrong to think that. Kiravan stared at him. You thought my crystals were pretty? Yes, and I always wondered about your scar. How did you get it? It must have been painful. For the first time, someone was asking about her scar not to make fun of her, but because they were genuinely interested. Kiravan told him the story of her childhood accident. You must have been very brave, Telan said when she finished. I think I would have been too scared to be as calm as you were. This conversation was overheard by other young Zephyrians, and soon more of them began to approach Kiravan with questions. They wanted to know what the humans had said to her, how they treated people who were different, and what it was like to be valued for being unique instead of rejected for it. Amy found Kiravan in the library later that day, surrounded by a group of young Zephyrians who were all talking at once. Amy, Kiravan called out when she saw her. Come meet my friends. Amy was amazed. These were the same Zephyrians who had ignored Kiravan just days ago. Now they were listening to her eagerly as she told them about human culture and different ideas of beauty. One young woman with a small chip in one of her crystals said, I have always been ashamed of this broken crystal, but maybe it makes me special instead of ugly. That is what the humans taught me, Kiravan said. They say that our flaws tell our stories, and our stories make us who we are. Amy smiled as she watched Kiravan, teaching other young Zephyrians the lessons she had, learned about self-acceptance and different kinds of beauty. But the changes were not limited to the young people. The news of the humans' choice had reached the Zephyrian homeworld, and it was causing a stir throughout their society. On the homeworld in the great crystal cities, young Zephyrians who had been hiding their imperfections began to ask questions. Why did an advanced alien species value someone that Zephyrian society had rejected? What did the humans see that they were missing? Some parents began to look at their own children differently. A mother who had been ashamed of her daughters, Uneven Crystal, suddenly wondered if maybe her child was beautiful in a way she had never considered. Teachers in schools found themselves answering difficult questions from students about why humans thought differences were good when Zephyrian society taught that only perfection was valuable. The leaders of Zephyrian society held emergency meetings to discuss what this meant for their culture. Some were angry that aliens had challenged their ways. Others were thoughtful and wondered if they had been wrong about some things. Back on the station, Ambassador Lyra Thess received new orders from her government. They had decided that refusing the human request would be too risky for their diplomatic relationship. Kiravan would be allowed to go to Earth. But more than that, the government wanted to understand what the humans saw in her. They ordered Lyra Thess to study human culture more carefully and to report on their different ideas about beauty and worth. The day before the humans were scheduled to leave, Lyra Thess asked for a private meeting with Jake. Captain Morrison, she said, I must ask you something directly. Do you truly find Kiravan attractive, or was your speech just a political gesture? Jake thought carefully before answering. Ambassador, when I look at Kiravan, I see intelligence in her eyes, kindness in her actions, and strength in how she has survived difficult treatment. I see someone who speaks 8 languages and works hard without complaining. I see unique beauty in her different appearance. Yes, I truly find her attractive in many ways. But her crystals are small and dull, Lyra Thess insisted. Her crystals are subtle and elegant, Jake replied. They remind me of moonlight on water. They are beautiful in a gentle way that is very appealing. And her scar? Her scar tells the story of a child who survived danger. It shows that she is a survivor. On Earth, many people find scars attractive because they show strength and experience. Lyra Thess was quiet for a long time. Your people truly see the world very differently than we do. Yes, Jake agreed. And maybe that is why our friendship will be valuable to both our peoples. The next morning, it was time for the humans to leave. Kiravan stood with them at the docking bay, carrying a small bag with her few possessions. She was nervous about leaving everything she had ever known, but she was also excited about seeing Earth and learning more about human culture. A crowd of young Zephyrians had come to see her off. Some brought her gifts, others just wanted to wish her well. Telon gave her a small crystal that he had carved himself. So you will remember that some of us always thought you were special, he said. Ambassador Lyra Thess also came to say goodbye. She looked at Kiravan with new eyes, trying to see what the humans saw. Kiravan, she said formally, you will be representing our people on Earth. Do your best to help them understand us. I will, Ambassador, Kiravan replied. And I will try to help our people understand them too. As the Star Runner pulled away from the station, Kiravan stood at a window, watching the station grow smaller. She was no longer the hidden, ashamed young woman she had been a week ago. She stood tall and proud, knowing that she had value and worth. On the Zephyrian homeworld, the changes continued to spread. Young people with imperfections began to speak up instead of hiding. Some families started to celebrate their children's differences instead of being ashamed of them. The government announced new studies into human culture and their ideas about diversity and beauty. Some schools began teaching that differences could be valuable instead of shameful. It would take time for such deep changes to really take hold in Zephyrian society. Many still believed that only perfection was beautiful, but seeds of change had been planted and some of those seeds were already starting to grow. Jake wrote in his captain's log that night, Today we learned that sometimes the greatest diplomatic success comes not from formal agreements or trade deals, but from simply showing others that there are different ways to see the world. By valuing someone that the Zephyrians had rejected, we may have helped an entire civilization begin to question their assumptions about worth and beauty. He looked out at the stars as the Star Runner headed toward Earth. Somewhere behind them, on the space station and on the Zephyrian homeworld, young people were learning that being different did not mean being worthless. And beside him, Kiravan was beginning a new life where her differences would be celebrated instead of hidden. The universe was full of different kinds of people, different kinds of beauty, and different ways of seeing the world. And that, Jake thought, was what made it wonderful.